Hello everybody, this is the Empirical Audiophile. What I want to talk about today is, cryogenics. And I see more and more manufacturers are using cryogenics as a selling point for their cables and speakers and things like this. Now, let me tell you a little bit about cryogenics from a aerospace engineer's point of view. Cryogenics is the freezing of steel or metal, and it takes it to the next step of becoming hard. You will send your steel out to a heat treating plant. The heat treating plant, like FPM, is a big heat treating plant, and the engineer will tell the heat treater that we will need this to be hardened and drawn or slow drawn, and we will need it to be frozen, cryogenic. Now, this is done for reasons because after it's been hardened, they will take it and put it in oil or whatever they're going to use to bring the steel down, to cool it off. And cryogenics is only to bring it down even further to make the steel harder. But there are problems with freezing. One thing the engineer is going to have tell the manufacturer how hard the steel has to be, told by Rockwell. Because if you get steel that's too hard, it will fracture and crack. If it's too soft, it will not last and perform like you want it. This is all up to the engineer to tell the heat treater what Rockwell they want it and how they want it heat treated. For example, in some industries like the can industry, you get like D2, and these dies that they make, the tool makers make, they cannot be sharpened. So the parts have to be interchangeable. These parts will be green ground, which means rough ground. They're sent out to the heat treater. The heat treater then heat treats them, and then you may ask them to be drawn and frozen because you need them a certain hardness because they are not being sharpened in the dies. They are throwaway parts once they are used up. Other times that you're not going to need something to be, cryogenically frozen because you take another risk of fissure cracks in the metal. And I do have pictures of that. For example, the picture that you're looking at here, you will see fissure cracks in the metal. And that is a problem when you freeze something and get it too hard. That can happen. Another thing of it is a lot of people in the audio industry will freeze their tubes. Well, when you have different metals together and you want them all frozen at once, they all react differently to being frozen and can crack or cause fissure cracks in the metal. You can't see this, but this is what a metallurgist takes up in college and learns that you can't do this or it causes problem. Now, when you harden something and you are going to cryogenically freeze it, like they're doing with audio equipment, they're cryogenically freezing it. So whatever the steel is, they cryogenically freeze it because they're not going to heat treat the metal that they're using. This doesn't necessarily mean you get a big, huge sonic difference. I remember years ago, probably 20, 25 years ago or more, where the Chicago Auto Society would take their tubes and send them out to be cryogenically frozen. And, was it worth the price of admission? No, not really. It gives you very little benefits, if any, that you can sonically hear. Does it pay off to pay that kind of money to have your tubes frozen? Which I told you in a video how you can do it yourself. Basically, take your tubes, put them in a deep freezer, and just keep them there until you want them. Then pull them out and let them come to room temperature after a day, and then you can use them. Now, if you think, well, that's not cryogenically freezing. Well, yeah, BMW used to do that with their engines. They actually take all their engines and put them outside and let them freeze because it was so cold to stabilize their engine, the steel to their engines. This is nothing new in the racing industry to cryogenically freeze parts like a camshaft or something like that. But sonically, does it give you a difference? Another myth that they're starting to push onto audiophiles is we cryogenically froze our cable and that takes impurities out. That's bullshit. That's 100% lying. No, cryogenic will not take steel and take impurities out. If anything, it could even harm the steel if you're not a metallurgist and know what the hell you are doing. It could create fissure cracks. And these cracks can go into your wiring or whatever and impede the sound instead of help it. You better know exactly what you're doing when you cryogenically freeze metal of any kind. Now, the lies, I don't know why they're lying to audiophiles, but I think it's so they think, oh, I'm hearing something different. It's almost like binding posts to your speakers. Ooh, we got to add a double set. And the manufacturers will say, we don't really want to add a double set because it doesn't help. But it sells speakers because without it, they could lose sales. So they do it to satisfy and appease the audiophile. Not that it's sonically going to make any difference in the world by wiring your speakers. You know, it makes no sense at all. There's plenty of videos on that about bi-wiring, how it doesn't even help. But there is something else. And I've tried to talk to turntable manufacturers about this. I did a video on turntables. They tell you to, in your turntable where you have your platter and it meets up, and they put a bronze bushing in, and they put the platter and the spindle goes into the bronze bushing, and they tell you put 2 to 4 drops of oil. I did a video on no, put more oil in there, bathe it in oil. But let me tell you a little secret, that they're charging outrageous prices for these kind of turntables, $5,000, $7,000. They act like this money means nothing to them when they make it. There's what they do to steel is they call it WPC coating. It's not really a coating, it's a treatment. I'm sorry, it's a treatment. WPC treatment on hardened steel, or the steel doesn't even have it could be treated metals. You could use the WPC on hardened steel and treated metals. And WPC is a process of micro beads. I mean micro beads blasting the metal or steel that you're using. Now, WPC, they use this in racing cars. And they found out like camshafts and engines and stuff like this. Like they'll have a camshaft and they'll WPC it. And instead of going 1 season and then they have to get rid of the camshaft, it could go 3 seasons. And then when they check out the tolerances of the engine that's been WPC'd, they'll find out that all the tolerances are still there, even though they ran that engine very, very hard. Because what WPC is, it's like, you see this on your spindles and stuff, you see they polish them. And then they polish the spindle and they put it into, on your turntable, a bronze bushing. Well, if you had a hardened bushing and you have your spindle, which is hardened, and you WPC both of them, they become super, super slippery. And to give you an idea, you could take a piece of steel and polish it to a 1 micron or less, a half a micron. That is a very, very fine polish when you can get something down to a micron or less. But WPC will even be better, especially if you're holding tight tolerances, like maybe 2/10 tolerance, and that's it you got. That's all you're using. A part that's been WPC will be more it will be slippery than a polished part. So that means if you had a hardened bushing and you put your spindle in there and added some oil, it would be super, super slippery, even if the tolerances were no more than a 10,000th of an inch to 2/10,000ths of an inch, okay? Or you would be saying a 2 micron, tolerance or something like that, because the WPC, what it literally does, and I'm showing you pictures of it, these before and after pictures here, it literally takes it and refines the grain even on hardened steel. It refines it. There's a grain on steel. Even if you polish it, there's still a grain. And WPC even refines that another step higher. And therefore, when you got two metal parts, that's why they use it in racing, and that's why they use it in the aerospace industry. That's why they use it in the industry, aerospace industry, because they need parts to move very, very accurately and freely. And they use it in the tool trade a lot, but it's expensive. If a turntable manufacturer did that and added that and had a hardened bushing and a hardened spindle, that turntable would last you your entire life and your children's entire life and their children's entire. And that's the part that wears. The whole trick of it is you have a hardened shaft onto a soft bronze bushing, whether it's oil impregnated or not. The object is the bronze bushing starts wearing because it is softer. But you don't need to do that if you give it a WPC coating. Then you can have harden and harden going into each other, little bit of lubrication, and that will last you forever, especially on a turntable that only spins at 33 1/3. But they don't do that, do they? Because they don't want to spend the money to make something last longer. You can do that to shafts. You can do that to everything on a turntable that wears, and it would then cut out the wearing. I mean, let's face it, if they use it in racing engines that are heating up, unbelievable friction, and they use it in dyes, and they use it in those applications, and the parts show barely any wear at all, if none, after years of use, what do you think it would do for a turntable? It would literally would never have to be sent in to ever be fixed, would it? Because all the moving parts would have WPC coated and they would last forever. And there would be nothing to replace. Anything that moves, the friction of those parts would be super, super slippery, even better than a 1 micron or less finish. That's what it does. They don't do that. They do this garbage of cryogenically treat. And then how are you going to cryogenically treat something? Okay, think about this and listen to it and say it sounds better. Well, what are you A-Bing it to? Well, you can't A-B it to the tubes you already have because your sonic memory won't last long enough to get those tubes treated and bring it back. Your sonic memory doesn't last that long. You would have to A-B it right then and there. Oh, so you're probably telling me now that, well, you just buy an extra set of tubes. Is that what you want? How do you know those tubes are going to be sonically the same as the tubes you got exactly? I mean, let's face facts. This science here. You can't even make microphones. You can't even make microphones sonically perform exactly the same. There's all kinds of videos on that where they make microphones. You can buy a microphone for, $50 all the way up to $30,000 for tube microphones. But sonically, they can't make them exactly the same. And this has been scientifically proven, along with scientifically proven that WPC treatment works. So if we can't make microphones the same, how can you make two tubes exactly the same? You cannot. They sonically cannot be the same. You have to take what you're going to cryogenically treat and compare it to itself and A-B it back and forth. And you can't do that because our sonic memories aren't that long. So when a manufacturer turns around and says we're cryogenically treating everything, why? What sonic benefits can you prove scientifically that it makes a big difference with what you are doing, and we can hear it. Is it in the range of our hearing ability? It becomes like I said, a point where the Chicago Audio Society, they don't do it anymore because it doesn't work. It's the emperor's new clothes. You're doing something and it's a selling point. Just like someone saying on a video that, oh, we cryogenically treat our wires and it purifies, it takes impurities out of the cable. It's bullshit. That's a lie. It can't do that. You got to get it from the vendor, the manufacturer of that wire, to take the impurities out before the wire is made and how they make it. Any engineer will tell you that. It's just lie after bullshit that they give to the audiophile because you'll buy it. It's snake oil. It's 100% snake oil. You know, we cryogenically, but boy, doesn't that sound good. Wow, I can get these tubes and I'm paying a lot more money because they're cryogenically treated. Of course, you don't really know if they cryogenically treated them or not. You're going off of their word. And what are the big benefits of doing that when cryogenically will harden steel that an engineer has already predetermined how hard that steel should be? Like a drill, for example. Take a drill. A drill, you can make it harder and harder and harder, a drill. Trouble is it will fracture, it will break when you're using it. You can't have that. An engineer has decided just how hard, what Rockwell that drill has to be to perform its longest and its ability to perform for you for the longest time it can before it gets dull and starts chipping. Okay, he's already predetermined that. If you keep hardening up a drill and you go to drill with it, it's going to fracture. Think of carbide. There's more than one kind of carbide out there. There's lots of carbide, but carbide is that way. In fact, carbide, if you drop it, it will fracture. Where steel, if you drop it, it will dent because of how hard carbide is. Makes sense. So when you do this, you better know cryogenically what you're doing and are you fracturing that steel that's inside the tube. You're never going to know. And if that tube fails early because of those fractures, you're never going to know. And if it sonically may sound good to you because it will be a placebo effect because you spent all your money cryogenically in your tubes, so you're going to have that placebo that, oh, wow, that sounds a lot better. Is it worth the price of admission? How long will that last before it doesn't cryogenically sound better and you just wasted your money? This was proven when we had the Audio Society that those tubes, they didn't pan out to be any good. So before you start wasting your money on cryogenically treating something, because you can't prove if a tube, if you damage the inside of it, because there's different metals. And everybody who does heat treating will tell you you can't heat treat all kinds of different metals together because they will expand and contract at different rates. So you have to heat treat all your A2, all your D2, all your S7s, all your 1040. You're going to have to do things with that kind of metal. And even then, metal changes. You could get 2 parts of D2 metal, and they won't be the same because we would get steel in, rolls of steel in, $300,000 rolls in, okay. They're made the same as they were the last time, but we would have to said, send us samples. Then we would check them out for their properties of electrical properties, and we have to check out for the magnetic properties, electrical properties. They would fail. Vendor would say, well, it's the same steel. We made it exact. Well, it isn't because we checked it out and we certified it. And no, it does not have the electrical properties after it's been heat treated or annealed that we want. Therefore, it is a reject. We can't take that roll of steel. Steel is that way. It's not as easy as you think to get steel to keep repeating, to stop growth. There are other ways of stopping growth of steel. Steel, you can get steel hardened, and it will still expand when you put it into a die. And sometimes that will be what they call normalizing the steel to help normalize it so it doesn't expand in a die and go out of tolerance. The same thing with a car. That steel will expand, and different steels expand at different times. So how can you turn around and cryogenically do something with different metals in it that expand and contract at different times and expect it to perform and say, oh, it sounds so much better? Well, if you have golden ears and can hear that, great. But most people cannot hear those differences. So this video was about, don't let these people fool you thinking that cryogenically treating something means better sound. It means more profits for them because they're going to pass it on to you. Remember, everything they do, if they spend another quarter, they're going to charge you $1.25 if they have to spend a quarter on something. They're going to charge you 5 times of what it's worth. That's why you get a lot of speaker manufacturers who turn around and put cheap crossovers in speakers, because every time they have to up something, instead of getting a capacitor that costs 25 cents, they get a capacitor that's going to cost them 50 cents or $5 or $10 or $50. You can understand what a $50 capacitor is going to cost you in the long run if they have to put one in to make it sonically sound better. To keep the price down, you put cheap stuff in, and that's why it ends up at GR Research, and he redoes everything because there is a price point where sonically, is it going to benefit enough to raise the price up and ask for 5 times of what you spent? That's why on turntables, they won't do a WPC finish on things to make your turntable and your arms last indefinitely, because sonically, it's not going to do anything except stop, wow, and flutter from your turntable wearing. All it's basically going to do is cost you more money because they want to make a profit. And they got to make a profit out of sending stuff out to have that done. So I hope you kind of understand that cryogenic does not and will never take impurities out of metal. It doesn't do that. It hardens metal even more so than what it is. That's why you have things frozen, because you need something so hard, like in the tool trade, that it won't wear when it's stamping out parts. And you either polish that part to reduce wear, or you will get that part to be treated with a WPC treating to make it wear even longer, because in the long run, it saves the customer. And others, for instance, is instead of making it out of steel, you would make it out of carbide. And you could get a die made from steel, and if it got 200 to 400 pounds on it before it would have to be pulled and sharpened, that was good. But if you made it out of carbide, you could get millions of hits off that die before the die would have to be pulled, just because the carbide is harder than steel. You get it? So an engineer has to know all that before you go into doing stuff. And then an engineer has to understand about finishes and fissure cracks and flange wrinkles and stuff like this when you're dealing with steel. But these people who are doing our audio, they're just blowing smoke up our ass. Now, if you think you want to pay extra for something like that, go ahead. Will it sonically sound so much better? I really doubt that very much. That it's sonically going to sound so much better. It's another way to get more money out of your pocket and say, ooh, see what we do? They don't do it. We do it. You're going to sonically get something better. Our cable's better because we cryogenically froze it. But then you can do that yourself. Get a deep freeze and throw your cable in there, and then in a year's time or 6 months' time, pull it out. Manufacturers have been doing that a long time by putting, like I said, BMW put their car engines outside, let them freeze. Okay, you can do that yourself. You don't have to send it off to, and see if sonically you're going to get a huge difference. More than likely, it's going to be a placebo effect, and you're going to just be fooling yourself. So until next time, this is the Empirical Audiophile. Hope you liked the video. Let's get the truth out there. Cryogenically doing stuff. There's a lot more science to it than what manufacturers are letting you know. And if you think about it, if you cryogenically do wire and it can cause fissures, and you're trying to get electrical signal through it, and it's damaging the wire maybe even more so than what it is, does that sound like you're going to get better sonic qualities? Because you don't know what the hell you're doing really, and you didn't talk to an engineer who knows metallurgy? Why don't they take the wire and coat it, give it a WPC coating, make it slipperier, like Teflon? Only bringing it up. So until next time, this is Empirical Audiophile. Hope you enjoyed the video, and see you next time.